Witherkum in Somerset, like most rural villages, is a place where everybody knows each other's business. Bill Galloway's family has lived here for generations.
It was a very busy village with people coming in from house to house. People were so closer together because it was nearly all family and friends.
But over the years, the local population has dwindled.
Nothing happens. You know, this is a busy day. We've seen a car. People generally quiet, keep themselves to themselves.
Now eager newcomers are moving in from the town for a taste of the country life.
Say, in a small place like this, because you upset too many people.
As soon as she moved in, Meg, a dedicated animal lover, was in seventh heaven.
And this is my fruit cage, which has all been shared by ducks, and the ducks have been very safe from foxes here. I do feel that animals need a spokesperson. They don't have rights. This area I feed the pheasants because I try to keep them off the hill where they're shot.
Meg seemed oblivious that farming communities have a very different attitude to animals.
I've been described as a warrior for animals, and I'm proud of that, you know.
Once she'd settled in, Meg decided she needed a way of introducing herself to the locals.
I organised an event sort of fairly soon after we moved in, which wasn't incredibly well attended by the villagers, but I didn't take that personally. My dog show that I organised, this was advertising the open night in the RSPCA shop.
She always had signs on her gate posts of there was always something going on.
The villagers were beginning to get wind of Meg's obsession for protecting all creatures great and small, and she certainly made an impression.
When I met Meg for the first time, I thought she was a very interfering old lady.
I was standing by my house and there was a gentleman from up the road who was walking his dogs in the field. It was pheasant breeding time and there were youngsters running around, and when I saw him doing it I thought, no, you know, he can't let his dog do that. A person walking around is bad enough, but a dog running around, ground nesting birds and chicks around. He was chasing the pheasants were flying up. So I couldn't help myself, I didn't think, I just shouted. He's held that pretty well against me ever since.
You must not do this, you must do this. Look after animals. Gave you earache all the time.
She was regarded, rightly or wrongly, as a bit of a nutter with regards to her animal sort of welfare thing, but I think she did used to take it to extremes. To come and live in a rural, small, farming village and then expect people to not do things in the country that they do, why would you want to go and live in the middle of it?
Although Meg hadn't become close to her neighbours, she did make some new friends.
In my life, I hadn't seen a badger, but I had badgers on my doorstep. I felt so privileged because it's not many people in this country ever see a live badger.
The villagers didn't want to encourage badgers, some believing they could spread tuberculosis in cattle, but Meg ignored them, determined to feed her badgers.
Sandwiches, peanuts, dried fruit.
Her decision didn't go down well with the locals.
I was told by one of my neighbours that she had to put a fence up because the badgers were spoiling her garden, and she said it very accusingly. I think badgers were a greater priority to me than being part of the community.
But government policy was that drastic action needed to be taken to lower the size of the badger population in the UK. It was believed they were helping to spread tuberculosis in cattle. And despite fierce debate on the subject, in 2012 farmers in the Somerset area became part of a pilot scheme and were issued with licences to carry out a badger cull within a mile of Meg's back door.
When we heard that there was going to be a badger cull, we just didn't believe it. We couldn't believe that human beings would be prepared to do that.
I appreciate that there is a problem with badgers. I don't necessarily agree that, I say, killing a load of them is going to make a difference to their problem, but that's what they powers to be decided. And Meg wanted to make an issue about it, which she definitely made an issue.
By now, Meg was a woman on a mission, with all thoughts of neighbourly relations out the window. She communicated with badger protection groups and was shocked to discover that one of her neighbours was allegedly taking part in the badger cull.
I just couldn't believe that he would be part of a badger cull. And my natural instinct was to name and shame this person.
With that information, Meg's next act would have serious consequences.
People who are shooting badgers didn't want anybody to know, obviously, and I don't think that's right. I think they should be prepared to tell people.
She went ahead and wrote the name of the alleged shooter on her poster and stuck it on her gate for all the locals to see. Meg's outed neighbour, who can't be named, declined to tell his side of the story.
I don't know what I was thinking at the time. I just did it.
Militant Meg was unstoppable. She decided to put up more posters revealing the local man's identity in the centre of the village, creating a huge rift with the majority of neighbours.
Couldn't believe that someone would be that, I don't know, stupid to actually do that. It was unbelievable.
Meg's crusade had caught the attention of the press. A national newspaper sent a photographer to the village to snap Meg holding the poster. The image sparked fury against her neighbour, whose personal details were now exposed.
I know that he was getting abusive phone calls, emails. They had all his contact details. It was like non-stop. He was frightened for his family, all because Meg had put posters up.
I didn't feel bad about the phone calls they were receiving. I thought, well, that's a bit more ammunition. I can't remember being remorseful.
The abusive phone calls from protesters continued to flood into the alleged shooter, and soon it became too much.
I mean, he was that frightened for his family, his wife and children, that he moved them out of the village.
Tensions were now increasing in the village, and neighbours made their feelings towards Meg clear. She was now ostracised from the community.
People would drive along here, mouthing evil bitch. I gradually noticed that people weren't speaking to me.
I don't think this is about the animals. This is about the nonsense that came in behind it.
Media reports on Meg's opposition to the cull drew animal rights protesters to camp out close to the village. They gathered in the local woods at night.
This is the gate that a lot of protesters would have had to open and walk through to this Witherkum wood. On several occasions there was shooting beside me, and I had to use these to make my presence known because I was really fearful.
Thanks to Meg's extreme actions, the village was now under siege.
Right, this is where I live. This is my place. That is the cover where all the protesters were kicking off. Then they used to congregate under that big oak tree. That's where they used to have a little bit of a shindig. They had no worry about shining spotlights. That's what they were, spotlights in all of these windows along here. Everybody knew about it. They didn't normally start until probably 2:30 in the morning. Just give you time to get to sleep. Started off with the lights, whistle, air horns. I don't need them out there keeping me awake every night. What they thought they were achieving, I do not know. But what they did achieve was to certainly piss us off along here.
It's quite loud. It needs to be.
My response to people who are complaining or have complained about noise in their village, my response to that would be, what about the noise the shooters have been making?
Locals were unimpressed by the protesters' tactics, which were fully supported by Meg, whose loyalties to her neighbours were by now long forgotten.
I think badgers were a greater priority to me than being part of the community.
At odds with the rest of the locals, Meg's naming and shaming tactics ended up with the police being called.
Fine, yes, come along to the police station. What an experience.
Meg was cautioned for exposing the personal details of the shooter.
I'm quite proud to have a caution for badgers, not a problem.
With the village now overrun with protesters, Witherkum was more like a war zone, with unrepentant Meg right in the thick of things.
We were spotted by a shooter returning home, and he stopped, reversed, and shone a huge bright light onto us, really dazzling, like a floodlight. And I said to him, "You're an absolute scumbag." But he sort of didn't say a word, and he drove on. The next day, I had 3 bags of dog excrement in my garden. I thought, what can I do with this?
What Meg did do was return it to one of the neighbours who she believed may have been involved. And she left a very clear note.
The note said, if you feel the need to shoot living targets, maybe you ought to join the army. And, oh, no, probably you would be too cowardly to be on the other end of a gun.
It's quite inflammatory.
Yes. Nasty.
The neighbours' response was to call the police.
They said, you had better not do it again. I promised not to do it again, and signed a little thing, and that was that.
After 6 weeks, the cult ended, having failed to reach its target. The protesters finally left Witherkum. But the ill feeling between neighbours and a now isolated Meg festered.
I don't know what reputation I had to start with, so I don't know about ruin, but I certainly have a very bad reputation now.
Do I feel any sympathy for her? No, I don't. I believe she's brought everything on herself.
For now, Britain's badgers can breathe safely. But there is one casualty in all this.
I think maybe a small village isn't the place for me.
With Meg selling up and moving on, it seems she won't be missed in the village of Witherkum.
I don't think it'll make any difference whatsoever. Except I won't be able to say we've got a nutter living in the village anymore.
For 3 years, Colin Burns lived in a small Ayrshire community with beautiful views across the Firth of Clyde.
I moved in and basically started to renovate the property room by room. I never had any issues at all with the neighbours. It was very quiet. It was a nice place to stay.
But in April 2013, he made the decision to move and rent the house out.
I replied to an advert I found on the internet. There was 2 people looking for a property with at least 2 bedrooms, preferably with 2 outbuildings, in a semi-rural or rural location in Ayrshire.
Colin felt the dog lovers were the ideal tenants for his house and wasted no time signing up Fiona Hope and Janet Perry. He let his neighbours know about their imminent arrival to the community.
I told the neighbours that 2 women were moving in. I told them they had some dogs. One of the neighbours asked me what type of dogs they had. I said, I think they've had, she did tell me she had pug dogs, a couple of Rottweilers, and that was her show dogs, and her pug dog was called Arthur.
The two women asked if they could make modifications to the outbuildings before they moved in, and Colin agreed. But when he went to check on the work, alarm bells began to ring.
I went into the sheds. There I found 3 men putting up large 6-foot-high steel cages inside the sheds. I asked how many dogs is she expecting to bring down here? And he said too many. Way too many. So at this point, I start to get a bit worried.
But the landlord wasn't the only one to be concerned by the work. Some of the neighbours had also noticed it, and according to Janet Perry, angrily confronted her as she arrived to oversee the renovations.
It was the day before Fiona had planned to move in. My dad had been down, and one of our neighbours had went up to the kennels up the back, saying that she wasn't happy that there was dogs coming on the property, and they could just take all the kennels back down because she wasn't having it.
Having expressed their opposition to Janet and Fiona moving in with their dogs, by moving day, the neighbours, who declined to tell their side of the story, confronted the new tenants head-on.
This is the access road that goes up to our property, but there was a car parked here. There was also a car parked across here. And there were 3 houses where the neighbours were out in the street. They were adamant that we weren't getting to go anywhere until they'd spoken to the landlord.
With the welcome far from warm, Janet attempted to smooth over what appeared to be an already doomed relationship.
I did try to talk to the neighbours to calm the situation down, but I was greeted with absolute horrendous language and abuse. And all the assumptions that they were making were on things that hadn't even happened, because there were no dogs on the property at this point in time.
And when the dogs did finally arrive, an already charged situation with the neighbours exploded.
Received a telephone call from one of the neighbours, and he informed me that Janet Perry and Fiona Hope had brought multiple Rottweilers to the property.
Come on!
He said the neighbours were going bananas.
Guys, enough! Settle down! Settle down!
With 22 dogs, including powerful breeds, there were clearly more than the couple of Rottweilers and a few pugs Colin had told the neighbours about.
Kenzie and Seamus, this is Eddie and Patsy and Riker, and this little girl on her own is Georgia.
For these two women, their dogs are their lives.
When I met Janet, I met her at a dog show. And we got chatting about the dogs and we kind of hit it off, and then we've been friends ever since.
The women have bred dogs for over 25 years. They place the canines in their care above anything else.
I would feed and care for my dogs before I would feed and care for myself. That sounds really eccentric, and I suppose we could be classed as being eccentric.
I'm particular. I'm not eccentric. I'm just particular.
And Janet and Fiona are so crazy about their dogs, they even hold on to them when they've departed for a better place.
These are urns with dogs' ashes in them. These ones are all the rotties. All the wooden ones are the rotties. This one here was a little mongrel we adopted a few years ago that nobody wanted. We found them wandering the streets. So we keep them all. It is my intentions when I go that they go with me. They'll go in the heck of a big coffin, but they'll go in the coffin and go with me, hopefully.
Oh, Riker. That's just not attractive.
They'd been in the property less than 24 hours, but it was already clear Janet and Fiona's relationship with their neighbours wasn't going to be an easy one. And after a first sleepless night, the neighbours wasted no time in making their complaints heard to landlord Colin.
Received a telephone call from one of the neighbours. He says they were howling from 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning.
And only 3 days after the dogs had arrived, Janet and Fiona got a surprise visit when the environmental health turned up to see if the neighbours' claims were true.
I was actually up here with the dogs, and it was about 11:30, and the 2 environmental health guys turned up at the door. They'd had a complaint about the noise. So I brought them in, I brought them through here, and I said, well, you know, as you can hear, it's quiet. He asked if I still had the dogs on the premises. And I said, no, they're in their kennels. And he said, oh, for God's sake, tell them to go and boil their head.
And one of their main questions, I think, was, are the dogs barking continuously through the night?
And the answer was no.
And the answer is no, categorically no, because Fiona spent the first nights here
in that
actually
chair.
Sleeping in the kennels. Are not sleeping in the kennels, sitting in the kennels reading a book.
Janet and Fiona may have passed environmental health inspection, but they were left in no doubt as to who they felt was at fault.
Quite categorically, the landlord was to blame for this, because he has lied to us, he's lied to the neighbours, he basically has lied to everybody. He led us to believe that everything was fine, the neighbours knew that the dogs were coming and there wasn't going to be a problem, and as far as the neighbours knew, we had 5 wee dogs and we weren't going to cause any problems.
But Colin disagreed with Janet and Fiona's point of view.
They tried to plead that they were being victimised. I felt lied to. I told Janet Perry I would let the neighbours know that they had some dogs, yes. Not 30 Rottweilers.
And it wasn't just relations between the tenants and their neighbours that hit rock bottom.
Tell me you love me. How much do you love me? Oh, big love me.
Landlord Colin was also at the sharp end of the villagers' rage.
I was getting shot from all angles from the neighbours because of a constant barrage of complaints. Blaming me for, this is your fault, bringing these idiots down here. I had decided that enough was enough already. I had no alternative at the time but to place a notice to quit.
Following the complaints from the neighbours, Colin's notice to quit was served just 2 weeks after his unpopular tenants moved in. In it, he stated he intended to repossess the property and move back in himself. Having served notice, he decided to visit his former home unannounced.
Knocked on the door. Janet Perry and Fiona Hope were actually trying to push a dog out the back door at the time.
Come on!
Then I said to them, how many bloody dogs have you got here? And she went, get out, you'll get in a minute, you'll get in a minute. Shut the door on me. So I went round to the front of the house. That's when I came into the front of the house. Fiona Hope was in the living room, and then Fiona Hope started to be very rude, told me that it wasn't my house anymore. It was her house, off.
It is mine,
no,
yes.
No, you didn't say it was your house, you said it was your home. You said it might be your house.
That's right.
But it's our home.
That was
the exact words it was said.
You may own the house, but
it may be your house, but
here,
it's our home. And at least give us the courtesy of knocking the door before you walk in.
It wasn't just the dogs outside, but also the ones inside that worried Colin.
I had a look out in the conservatory, and there I saw about 6 dog cages in my conservatory on the floor. I felt really bad, I felt sick.
Does it look like there've been 5 or 6 dogs peeing and pooing all over the floor?
Other people have dogs in their houses. Dogs don't, unless, well, I have to say, if I brought one of my kennel dogs into the house, they may wee in the house. But dogs who live in the house, I assume, are house trained.
It was clear to Colin just why the neighbours had become so angry.
If I lived there personally with the amount of dogs at that property, I think I'd be going I'd be demented. I think I'd be going off my head.
For Colin, it wasn't just the noise of the dogs that was clearly a problem. When he stepped out into his once beautiful garden, he was in for another shock.
Now, these people told me they would look after my property. They definitely have looked after it. Look at that. That is a mess.
This part of the garden here, and this part of the garden here, where the apple tree is, this did not get done by the dogs. I deliberately did this. I dug up all the old plants so I could plant new stuff.
The garden that's the one thing that he's commented on that I'm happy to hold my hands up to. His garden is a mess, but it's not destroyed, it's not beyond repair.
You couldn't write it. You couldn't make a story like this up. They've told you they're going to look after it. They've been totally led down the garden path. It is an absolute disgrace.
Colin may have been unhappy at how they treated his property, but Janet and Fiona were advised by a solicitor that the grounds on which he sought repossession were invalid.
Here you go. Kenzie, no.
They're saying, ooh,
Kenzie,
leave the baby alone.
Oh, she's baby mad.
He's got his stick.
She is baby mad.
Although they're neighbours and Janet and Fiona's landlord wanted them out,
Out.
Come on.
Out. Yes, it's a baby, but it's not your baby.
the tenants decided to stay put. And as summer rolled on, they carried on with their daily lives.
They've been out, they've been fed, they've had a play, they've had their treats. Now they come back in, out, get their bedding cleaned out, and they'll go into their bed. I'll get the other ones out, get them fed, get them cleaned out.
As the weeks went by, the constant activity only fueled the neighbours' anger. And even more determined to get his tenants out, Colin decided to try and get rid of them one more time.
I received a phone call from one of the neighbours. She says, listen to this. And she held her mobile phone up outside her back door of her house. And all I could hear was dogs barking and yelping and making one hell of a racket.
The neighbours, who didn't want to speak on camera, told the local press that they'd barely slept in months due to the noise. But despite contacting police, Janet and Fiona were still there. While his tenants carried on with their lives,
We cook this every morning, pasta and meat, and they get their biscuits.
Colin was beginning to despair of the situation.
I'm feeling totally let down by departments that I'd contacted.
There we go, come on.
I'm feeling sorry for the neighbours. I'm feeling sorry for myself because I let these two tenants into the property.
Down. Wait. I didn't say speak down. Get down.
But the landlord was soon to feel even worse when 2 months after Janet and Fiona moved in, he began to receive complaints from their neighbours about a pungent new problem.
I go around the garden and pick up the dog poo. We put it initially into the wheelbarrow here, and the wheelbarrow's collected a couple of times a week.
Regarding the dog excrement, I had lots of phone calls regarding that. They had wheelbarrows of dog excrement in the back garden.
There was an allegation that we were disposing of a dog poo out the back, and we have out the back at the pond. We do have a straw pile where we dispose of the bedding, but not the dog poo. We had a complaint regarding it through the front.
And it stays covered over all the time. I don't uncover that until the guy's coming to take it away. That was one of the only things that the environmental health asked, because it was in the front garden, could we cover it up? So I took their advice and covered it up.
I think it's a disgrace. I think it's extremely unhygienic. And for two women of their age, I think it's disgusting.
The foul smells were the final straw. Frustrated that Colin hadn't yet got the ladies out, the neighbours vented their anger at the landlord.
I was receiving some fantastic text messages and phone calls from neighbours complaining about the noise and about the tenants.
The villagers were to make it clear that Colin was no longer welcome in the area, and when he did return to visit, two cars were driven menacingly at him.
You nearly hit me, What are you doing? Did you get that?
The police were called and statements taken. Despite his previous attempt to get rid of his tenants failing, landlord Colin was determined to get them out, and in September 2013 he served a second notice to quit. But Janet and Fiona had suspicions people were trying to force them and their dogs out in other ways.
There was some raw meat lying just in here at the corner. I've got a picture of it, you can have a wee look at. Now this actually, I found this really scary because over the 3 months previous we'd had several threats to actually poison the dogs.
Now believing themselves and their dogs to be in danger, and with a notice to quit hanging over them, Janet and Fiona had had enough.
I think it was the last of a long line of incidents. The dogs can't defend themselves. The dogs can't speak up for themselves. The dogs can't come to the door and say, "Mum, that person's trying to give us something not very nice." We have to defend the dogs. They can't do it. And our only defence of the dogs now is to get them away to hell out of here.
By November 2013, only 5 months after they moved in, peace looked like it would once again return to this Scottish community.
I don't have the energy to fight them anymore. I'm absolutely exhausted.
Janet and Fiona decided to move their lives on, but were still feeling like victims.
This having to sort everything out again and put everything back in boxes and transport it to somewhere else, it's a huge undertaking.
The thought of that people would treat me like this is just horrific. If I'm a neighbour for hell, I'm certainly not the only one in this block to be a neighbour for hell. I know if they be bluntly honest, they cannot say that I have stood and I have threatened them or shouted at them or sworn at them or done anything that would justify them calling me a neighbour for hell.
But after a bitter 5-month war involving some of their neighbours, Colin saw the situation rather differently.
Regarding the neighbours shouting and bawling, I think there's always 2 sides to every story. Often there are 3 sides to every story. You'll get one side, another side, and the truth somewhere in the middle. If I would have actually known how many dogs actually were brought to that property, there'd be no way on earth I would have rented that property out to Janet Perry and Fiona Hogg. They're claiming to be the victim, but they've actually caused a lot of trouble.
The 2 women and their dogs have now moved to an undisclosed address. We've yet to hear what their new neighbours think of them. If it's peace and tranquility you're after, you'd think the rolling hills of Somerset would be the perfect location to set up home. Surrounded by farmland and country parks, the elegant properties in the market town of Yoville were the only choice for one growing family.
We liked the house, we really liked the house. The place was Victorian and it was original. We loved that era.
9 years ago, when Sue and Guy DeRoper and their 4 children found their dream home, they were over the moon.
We just wanted to get in and sorted as quick as we possibly could. Just unpacked, basically, and went to bed.
But that first night in the new house, they didn't get the peaceful sleep they were hoping for.
I think it was during that night, and it was kind of a, what's going on? As the nights went on, it just became more apparent that, you know, there was a big chicken problem somewhere.
Although the DeRopers could hear chickens, at first they weren't sure where they were.
It's very difficult to find out where the source of it was coming from. But luckily, one of the neighbours sort of introduced herself. She took us into her house and showed us her back garden. It was then that we discovered who owned the chickens.
What was meant to be their dream home was now turning into a nightmare.
Got this lovely place that we're in, accommodating everyone, everyone's comfortable, but what have we done?
It was now clear to the de Ropers that their garden bordered a neighbour's yard that was overrun with chickens. That neighbour was Peter Studley, and his chickens were running wild throughout his backyard and across neighbouring gardens and alleys.
Well, I suppose when de Ropers moved in this house, I suppose there was 100 plus chickens and cockerels.
69-year-old Somerset local, Mr Studley, was already known in the town as something of a character.
Oh, I think Mr Studley's got a bit of a bad boy reputation.
Who divided opinion among the residents.
But he's been absolutely fine with me.
Morning, Mark. How are you this morning?
Fine, thanks, you mate?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Just a lot of people don't like him, and that's all there is to it.
Got your normal, Pete?
Yes. Thank you. Getting thinner and thinner, Mark.
Always does, though, doesn't it, eh? No good news. However, knows Pete, you know, is always ducking and diving, wheeling and dealing.
Thank you, Mark.
Cheers, mate.
I suppose I am, in my own way, a good neighbour because I don't get involved with them. You know, I let people do what they want to do and I do what I want to do. There ain't no problem there.
When Mr Studley purchased the carpet shop and the flat above it in the town centre, he also gained a few chickens that had been left behind by the previous owner.
Somebody moved out and left the chicken there. You know what I mean? But I always thought somebody were going to come back for them, but nobody come back for them. I grew up on a farm, a big farm when I was a kid. Animals were lovely. I liked it, like, you know what I mean? I really do. You appreciate what life is all about, you know what I mean?
Under Mr Studley's nurturing wing, the army of chickens began to grow.
Used to come back with bags of bread and bags of corn, and I used to just chuck them on the floor. Chuck them on the floor. And they used to come and pick it. And they'd be all round me, up on me lap everywhere. That's how tame they were.
The chickens may have been tame, but to the de Ropers next door, they were ruining their dream home.
Welcome to our little garden. This was completely out of bounds to everyone at the time of the chickens. It was absolutely a shocker when we first saw this. The whole of this area was just, it looked like a scrapyard with chickens on it.
It's a description Mr Studley doesn't dispute.
It was not a garden. It was a waste dump. You couldn't do nothing. It was out of control, really, you know what I mean?
Not only did we have eggs dotted around, which you could see had been there for a long time, we also had carcasses dropped around, usually covered in maggots. Some of the chickens would be eating the carcasses.
I didn't leave dead carcasses about. I used to pick them up there and chuck them in a bin liner and chuck them out with a rubbish dust cart.
The smell that used to hit us from an egg cracking, and you knew it was a rotten egg, was absolutely atrocious. I have physically been in the garden before and an egg is cracked and I've had to run inside gagging.
And it wasn't just the stench from the rotting eggs and carcasses. There were other unwelcome animal intruders.
We've seen rats in this area and we've seen rats coming down our back alley going all the way round the back.
I got on all right with the rats. I mean, a rat ain't going to bite you unless you try to do something to him.
I don't think Studley cared about hygiene. I don't think Studley cared about the interference it was causing the neighbours. He was just being completely selfish about the whole matter.
Some people might think, well, you get used to it, but you don't.
But these noisemakers were of a feathered variety.
Every cockerel that crows are like fingernails down a blackboard.
A row was brewing over neighbour Peter Studley's 120 chickens running wild in the backyard next door to the de Ropers.
The thing is about chickens, cockerels and stuff like that, it's not constant it's sporadic. Your body tends to put itself in a full sense of security, and you relax, and then suddenly it's and you're like, there it goes again, and you can't get away from it.
The Doropa's lives were becoming unbearable.
As far as your eyes could see in this whole area, there was nothing but chickens.
But despite the Doropa's complaints that the chickens were making their lives a misery, their owner Peter Studley disagreed they were a nuisance.
No, I never had no difficulties sleeping with them. They never used to make no noise in the middle of the night anyway.
For the Doropas, though, the chickens were making every part of their home life a nightmare.
Well, the pressure it was putting on us is we actually felt like caged animals. And you looked out the window and there were some animals out there that had the free roam. So we were the ones that were being caged when it was actually the cockerels that should have been caged.
Living next door to over 100 chickens had become a hellish nightmare. But next door in his flat,
this is my bedroom in here.
Their neighbour still didn't think there was an issue.
These suitcases, all full up with clothes that I never chuck nothing away, because I might need it one day. And this is my videos, mostly train videos, engines, steam engines. I'm very happy here. I've no worries and I'm happy.
Mr. Studley may have ignored their complaints to him about the chickens, but the Doropas weren't prepared to give up on their dream home.
We decided that the house was lovely and we shouldn't be put off by an aggravating noise.
Believing that their neighbour wasn't properly looking after the chickens, the Doropas reported them as being maltreated.
When we originally contacted the RSPCA, we were hoping that they'd see the state of the land over there and actually rehome them, give them to somebody in the country who was quite happy to look after all these chickens and cockerels and give them a proper life with proper food and proper facilities for a happy and healthy life, not leave them in a fly-tipping yard.
Unfortunately for the family, the authorities decided Mr. Studley hadn't been neglecting his chickens.
When the RSPC lady used to come, she said, oh, well, they were looked after. So, I mean, they had running water, they had plenty of food, you know, and plenty of room to run around on, you know what I mean? So.
At their wits' end, the Doropas now tried a different attack and called the council about the constant bird noise. They were asked to record every cluck and crow the chickens were making.
The noise in this room was absolutely horrendous. Environmental health guys gave us a clicker. Every time the noise came along, you press the clicker and it recorded for a certain amount of time. The clicker, it seemed like it was going all night. It seemed like I was pressing it literally every second of the night. I can't remember the precise figure, but it just felt like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clicks all through that night.
At last, it seemed like the family had the evidence they needed for the council to give Mr. Studley a noise abatement order.
We never heard how many crows an hour we got with it.
They just said that it was enough.
Yeah, they didn't really
to
go into
warrant
depth.
The noise abatement.
The Doropas believed the order would end their nightmare, but the battle with Mr. Studley over the chickens wasn't finished.
This was the initial stages of the whole procedure, but it was completely ignored by Mr. Studley.
Nobody gave me this abatement order, I found it. Right? And I chucked it straight, looked at it and laughed and chucked it in the bin. A joke. I thought it was a joke.
At that point, you know, environmental health probably didn't know which way to turn. So rather than everything being sorted, it just went on and on and on.
With the official order falling on deaf ears, in the weeks that followed, the Doropas would see their neighbours' defiance turn to hostility.
I wasn't going along with rubbish like that. I can't believe that there's such a thing. Neighbours should mind their own business. Indeed, they should.
For the next 18 months, their neighbour and his chickens continued life as before. But for the DeRopers, the daily disturbances and lack of sleep was tearing the family apart.
It put a strain on our relationship because it ended up being just a constant battle to try and make things right. It can put you in a very, very low mood, anxious, you know, to the point you feel that you want to give up.
As the dispute escalated, the DeRopers began to feel intimidated by Mr. Studley himself.
Mr. Studley would be looking from that window there, which you can't see now, it's overgrown. But it always felt very intimidating. He not only had the look over all of this land, but he could see right into our back garden to what we were doing.
You're sat in your living room watching your TV, and obviously my view is straight out of the back. And then all of a sudden, right in your line of sight, looking back in at you, is a man standing at the end of your garden, bearing in mind the garden's, what, 15 feet long? It's quite intimidating.
Always let people know what you're about. Say, for instance, when you're down the garden, you know, just sort of have a look round and look through the window, and you see when they're out there, or he's behind the curtain. They cause trouble for me, basically. So why should I have to be a nice man today?
Unconcerned his actions might simply strengthen the DeRopers' case against him, Mr. Studley decided to reach out to his neighbours in his own special way.
We had a handwritten letter that was delivered through the door.
The gist of it was like, I'm keeping my eye on you or something, and if you want trouble, you've stirred up or you've gone to the wrong person or something. It was really quite general, wasn't it? It was just a general. Well, it wasn't a hello, welcome to the neighbourhood. I'm your neighbour. I'd like to introduce myself.
Please come round for a cup of coffee. It wasn't one of those.
No, it wasn't.
It was signed. It was P scribbled out, and then the chicken owner.
Guy was quite angry when he read the letter, and he didn't want to tell me because he knew that I'd been feeling a little bit threatened.
I did write a letter to the DeRopers, but I never put no threats on it letter. Are you with me? I never put no threats on.
It was just insults?
Basically, yes.
That was the final straw for the DeRopers, who reported Mr. Studley's behaviour to the South Somerset District Council. He was ordered to appear before a magistrate to find a solution to the dispute and the chicken problem. It looked like the DeRopers might get rid of their noisy neighbour.
Obviously, at that point, I kind of felt a little bit of relief because, you know, I knew at that point that it was, you know, a matter of time now before it was going to be all over.
They're making up all this stuff, but the trouble is, they've realised now that I don't worry two hoots of what they say or what the court dishes out to me. My sound advice from the DeRopers is to just leave me alone.
When the court date came, Mr. Studley didn't attend, and he was awarded an ASBO for him and his chickens in his absence.
He had to get rid of all animals and not cause any intimidation.
It looked like the DeRopers had achieved what they wanted, but the 120 chickens didn't leave without a fight.
As you can imagine, because the chickens are free roaming all in this area, it went on for months, and it was always the case that we knew that there was going to be one cockerel left.
The noisy hell continued as charities and animal lovers fought to catch Mr. Studley's chickens.
I said, I believe, I will celebrate when the last one is removed.
They're causing trouble for me because that's basically all they done. And for the poor old chicken, I had to go. So, you know, as you get rid of an 100-odd chicken, it would have been better if it got rid of they and kept the chickens. You know what I mean?
Finally, 6 weeks after being given the ASBO, all 120 chickens had been removed. The DeRopers' longed-for silence now reigned.
It was lovely to sort of have a full night's sleep. The area outside where they were, it's all full of birds and, you know, nature. And probably for the first time in a few years, we're able to sort of go outside and drink tea and coffee in the morning when we get up in the sun in the garden, which is absolutely brilliant.
Nevertheless, a shadow continues to hang over the family's peaceful lives. 5 years after Mr. Studley's ASBO, who knows if life will change once again.
I believe the ASBO has ended now. I'm just waiting now for the chickens to reappear.
But Peter Studley is never that predictable.
The pigs are coming now. That's all I got to say about it. I got to have the pigs now.
In Southampton, 54-year-old Laurel Wingfield lives in a ground floor flat overlooking a communal garden. She's been here since 2006, and suffering from ME, the easy access meets her every need.
Before I became ill, I was very active. I was an archaeologist. I did martial arts. I cycled everywhere. Life now is very difficult. Everything's a struggle.
As her illness worsened, the communal gardens became an important focus.
This is a garden that I created with the help of a friend. I could look out and see the roses and the bedding plants. And it was just nice to make something pleasant here. And it just looked as if a lot of hard work had gone into it.
Unfortunately for Laurel, not all the residents appreciated the new planting.
Well, a friend who had helped me to put this together, she would be working on the garden and she'd start to notice that there was dog feces all over it. I thought, how selfish, just how selfish of someone to do that.
It wasn't long before Laurel thought she'd spotted the culprit. Rocco, the Highland Terrier. His owner was Harry Mitchell, a retired policeman.
The first time I met Harry was when I was seeing a friend off late at night, and then out of the corner of my eye, I saw Harry come from behind the block with his dog, and I knew that somebody had been taking the dog around there to mess on the garden. And I asked him, have you just taken your dog around there to mess on the garden? And the response was the most unbelievable flood of abuse. Just shouting, just a constant torrent of noise. He accused me of going into the garden myself and messing in the garden myself.
Outraged at her neighbour, but terrified to confront him again, she reported him and his dog to the council. They responded by sending a warning letter to all residents, including Harry, stating that dogs are not permitted to foul common areas.
On the day that the letter arrived, I was in the kitchen and I saw Harry come from his flat across the communal area, marching across. He looked furious. And he started yelling at me, I know it was you, I know it was you. I tried to reason with Harry. I tried to point out, look, it says in the tenancy agreement, people who have dogs have to keep control of them. And then I saw his face go red. And his eyes started to shine with rage. And he snarled, why you? And I realised he's going to attack me. And I had to slam the door in his face. But I've lived in fear of that man ever since.
Harry denies all knowledge of this event. Terrified of tackling Harry directly, Laurel reported every dog poo she spotted to the council. But with Harry fiercely insisting it was not Rocco, the council put up a gate to stop dogs coming into the garden. But these new gates created an even bigger problem for Laurel.
I need the gates to be left open because with my disability, I'm dependent on a mobility scooter. When the back gate was closed, I had to get off my mobility scooter to open the gate. As well as having chronic fatigue, I have balance problems. There's a very real risk of me falling.
Laurel hoped that leaving the gate open would resolve her problem.
There was one occasion when I needed to go somewhere, and I thought it would be easier if I went out and opened it, and then I could go through it on my scooter later. Harry came out from behind the fence on the other side of the path, closed the gate, and stood there holding it closed. I don't know his reasoning, why it's so important to him that they're kept closed. I can only guess that it's so that his dog can't run out on the road.
The gate now became a new problem for the whole community, and Laurel insisted that it stopped her getting to her house.
Harry actually came around and stood on my patio so that I couldn't park my scooter. And he was threatening me with sending me a solicitor's letter just because I left the gate open. Harry was talking so loudly that night that half the block must have heard him.
Laurel's upstairs neighbour, Samantha Owen, heard the row.
I could hear an argument brewing. Harry was talking to her in a raised voice and making threats to her. He was loud. I mean, if I could hear it through a closed door while watching TV, then, you know, you could hear it at the end of the block.
His behaviour was aggressive. It was just a noise. He's just talking all the time. I couldn't reply because he just wouldn't stop talking.
You don't accost people, disabled women at night, in the dark, in their back garden. It was pure intimidation.
Harry has denied all knowledge of this event.
Harry is always picking up anything that's laying around anyway. I stand outside and have a cigarette dead on 10 o'clock, and he's always out there picking up any rubbish and whatever the dog's left, I suppose.
And he's very good to you, isn't he?
He's very good to me, yes.
With the neighbourhood divided, Laurel and Samantha started legal action against the council to have the gates removed. They lost.
And if she's not happy in that situation, she needs to ask the council for a move.
Yeah.
Where there is no gate.
Quite frankly, if a gate's put on there, it's put on there for a reason, isn't it?
Of course it is.
But not long after, the gate totally disappeared.
One particular day, and I saw her unscrewing hinges, but I didn't realise at the time that's what she was actually doing. It wasn't until later on in the day that I noticed the gate was off and within our courtyard. So she'd obviously been taking the gate off.
Did somebody saw me do it? Well, how could they? I didn't do it.
With the gate no longer a problem for Laurel, she turned her attention back to her neighbour's dog.
The council asked me, do I have any proof that the dog was running loose? So I started filming the dog. It's about 9:25 a.m. and yes, there's Harry's dog again. I was sitting here filming Harry's dog running loose. Now over 12 minutes. He should shut that dog out. Now doesn't know what to do. As I was filming, Harry came out, he saw me, and he started shouting at me.
Do you mind, madam?
Do I mind what? Oi!
You
were assaulting me, Harry.
I'm not assaulting you. You're assaulting me by taking pictures.
His arm shot out. He grabbed me by the wrist with one hand, and he tried to take my camcorder with the other hand. You are assaulting me, and I'm going to have you arrested. I am getting evidence that you are breaking your tenancy agreement by letting your dog run loose, unsupervised, and uncontrolled in a communal area.
I didn't know he was out.
Oh, you didn't know he was out?
No, I've been indoors with my wife. She's in the shower.
You opened the door, put him outside, shut the door.
No, I did not. No, I did not. He might have come out while doing some washing out, but I didn't see him come out. I'm sorry, Laura. I did not see him come out this door.
You just assaulted me and I'm going to report you.
I did not assault you.
Yes, you did. You grabbed me.
I pushed the camera out the way. Don't lie.
I was in shock. I thought he was going to hit me.
The police were called, and Laurel claims they agreed to talk with Harry under caution. No other action was taken. Despite this, Harry holds no grudge.
I'm quite happy to make the peace. If Laurel came to me for help, or anybody in here, I'll do the same as I normally do, help them.
Harry denies all allegations made by Laurel on behalf of himself and Rocco. Laurel is continuing to complain to the council about the poo in the garden and is determined to get evidence.
Oh, and I finally caught him messing on the grass. Yep, finally got proof.
Near the market town of Chippenham in the Cotswolds lives Phil Rice in the ground floor flat of a 2-storey council block.
They're really, really good down here. You know, if we do have issues, and we say minor issues, it's forgotten about the next day or in the next few days, you know, and then we just get on like one big family.
Phil's an exotic bird enthusiast and shares his flat with a treasured collection of canaries and budgies.
That's 5 baby budgies in there. You know, if I was to sell them private, I could get probably between £10 and £20 a bird for them all, depending on their quality. It's a good hobby.
He'd lived here for more than 3 years, when in 2007, a new neighbour moved into the block next door.
He come out of there, the entrance there to the 3 flats here, and he basically introduced himself as saying words along the lines, "Hi, I'm Bob, pleased to meet you." And with the first initial meeting, thought he was quite a decent neighbour.
And within weeks of moving in, Keep Fit enthusiast Bob Williamson made an early attempt at bonding with Phil when he was having tea in his flat one day with friends.
There was like a knock at the window, like that, and it was Mr. Williamson, and he was coming out like saying, "Oh, you lot ought to come circuit training, you lot ought to weight training and this, that and the other, and salsa dancing."
But Phil wasn't impressed with Bob.
The salsa dancing isn't for me, not my type of thing. At the start off, we thought he was trying to be friendly, but when he kept doing it, we were thinking along the lines, oh, he's annoying.
Bob denies this event ever took place, but although he lives in a separate building to Phil, the 2 blocks share a communal yard. And Phil's habit of bringing his noisy birds out there didn't go down well with Bob.
Bob was complaining about the noise level they were making, but, you know, for hell's sake, they're birds, they're going to make noise, you know. It's not like they're cockerels. It's ludicrous. I've never heard anything like it, to be quite honest with you.
There were growing tensions between the neighbours, but one summer afternoon, this was to go up a level when Phil and his friends were out in the communal yard having a party.
I was walking from the shop with ciders and burgers and sausages where we were having a barbecue out the back. We got to roughly around about this point then. Robert was on this driveway and he was fiddling about with stuff in his van, and then he seen me where I am now at this point, and he shouted, "When you're going to turn that noise down, when you're going to stop," and all this sort of business. Got his hands in his pocket like that. He said, "I got to put my 5-year-old son to bed," he said, "in a minute." And this was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then with that, he got his hand in his pocket and he threw the keys like that. And then he just walked up to me like that. So he's like trying to make himself big. It scared me a bit because I thought he was going to come for me. I honestly, genuinely thought he was going to come for me and lay his hands on me or assault me or whatever.
According to Phil, Bob's complaint was that the music in the courtyard was too loud.
The volume, I would say, was at a reasonable level, and we turned it down at a reasonable time and stopped playing the music at a reasonable time.
Phil called the police.
It was left that the police had just basically warned him of his conduct in the street for public order.
Bob denies this took place.
I walked off to the back garden there, the back communal yard there, and carried on regardless, drinking cider and having a few burgers.
This communal yard continued to be the main battleground. While Phil's side of the yard contains a discarded sofa, Bob's is well kept, but Phil kept placing his bird table on the border of the 2.
This is a bird table. It was put there for us to enjoy the sights of some wild birds possibly coming in here. What we get then, the bird table is being moved. It was moved over from that point there where I'm just lifting it from to there. I put it back there and then it'd come sort of like more into the corner here, you know, that sort of business. Why doesn't the guy leave other's stuff alone. We don't go touching his stuff. We daren't touch his stuff because he'd be the first person to jump up and down on the spot.
Despite having no proof, Phil is convinced it was Bob. But it wasn't just the bird table that was causing friction in the yard.
He accused me of purposely chucking the pegs on the floor. But what would I want to go and do that for? That's just being petty, being real petty. In the meantime, he's just gone, put my washing on the floor. It could only be him. It could only be him because nobody else here would have done something like that.
This time, he called the Housing Association to complain about Bob. Keen to keep the peace, the association arranged a meeting for the two men in a neutral location.
We waited in a room upstairs here in this building for over half an hour or a roundabout, and there's no sight or sound of him. He never turned up, and I think he's wasted everybody's time. He said he forgot what time it was, but he knew.
Following the aborted mediation meeting, Phil claims that Bob continued to harass him.
When he'd walk by the window, he'd like, like that, laughing as though, well, you were fools to go up there, you know? But he was the one who wanted to do it. Why didn't he turn up? And then he'd keep doing that every time he walked past the window. He would just like, like that sort of thing.
And within months, Bob was back to his old tricks.
I was in here cooking one day, as you do, and the phone went. So I picked the phone up. Hello, and he said, you better get outside because Bob's out there. He was on the phone like this. He said, you better get outside because Bob's out there sweeping up and you got all your whitewashing out there and there's dust going everywhere and it might have gone on the washing. I come out of that door there, quite a rate of knots, if you like. I walked through the washing like this, and then I noticed like dirty black marks on there. This actual top was out there then, and it had like black marks there. It's like somebody had gone like that on it, you know? I took them in, and then I had to wash them again.
Bob admits to sweeping in the yard, as no one else would do it, but Phil was convinced he had ruined his washing and decided to get his own back.
Basically, I put something on my friend's social networking page. He lived at the time directly above Bob. I said to my friend, I said, do us a favour. I said, chuck some water bombs and some acid bombs out of your bedroom window on top of Bob's van. And of course, Bob was friends with my friend on Facebook, and he's seen it. And then he's obviously gone and printed it off and took it to the police. The police wrapped my knuckles about it, gave me a good telling off. You know, you shouldn't go putting stuff like that on social networking sites, you know, they're dangerous things. I hold my hand up and I say, yeah, it's a mistake, you know, it was the wrong thing to do.
But Phil's joke would have serious consequences. Bob printed out screenshots of the posting.
And he put them from leading from his ground floor all the way up, bang, 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 right up, near enough to my friend's front door. I then rang the police. The police had instructed me to take a quick snap on my phone just in case he pulled them all down and said, oh, no, I didn't do that, you know, in case he denied it, basically. And I was just about ready to hit the button, and then he come running out the door like that, and then I'm like, whipped the phone back into my pocket, and then he's gone up to the wall, whips one off the wall, rips another one off the wall, and he goes, yeah, that's for you, and he just went like that. And then he put his hand on my shoulder. I then said to him, get off me, Bob, get off me. And I just went whack like that, and hard as I could, I headbutted him. And then he got my head into a headlock, went like that, into my face, boom, 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 like that. You know, giving it the left hook or whatever into my face.
Following the fight, the police were called and attempted to broker a peace deal between the warring neighbours.
3 or 4 days later, one of the local community support police officers come out. I had to sign a form to stay away from him, and he had to sign a form to stay away from me. But it wasn't like an harassment order or anything like that.
The Housing Association considered the dispute to be ongoing, and the police continued to keep watch. It's been several months since the fight, and for the moment, peace reigns in Chippenham.
From time to time, I do walk out in the garden, you know, to see if he's touched any of my property or fiddled about in my washing. He may erupt, you know, he may not. He's like a volcano.
But for now, the only noise to be heard in the communal yard is the chirping from Phil's budgies.